For those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, we are a nonpartisan organization dedicated to bringing together groups, organizations, people on campus who normally don't have discussions. In the past, we've hosted a discussion on the school vouchers. We've hosted an interfaith panel discussion on the nature of Judeo-Christian religions between the Texas Halal, the Muslim Student Association, and the Asian American Campus Ministry. We've put on a lot of different events, and this is the first event this semester that we're helping to host. So I'd like to thank all of you whose first time it is at one of our events. I'd like to thank you for coming. And for those of you who've been to one of our events in the past, I'd like to thank you for coming back. Today we are discussing a very important issue, perhaps one of the more controversial issues when it comes to social justice in our country today. It's an issue that, frankly, even our country has, over the years, had struggles with. And if we look at 1973, when the death penalty was suspended, and then in 1977, when it was reinstated again, clearly the judicial minds of our own time have had questions about the validity of the death penalty. So today, I foresee we're going to be considering questions of whether or not the death penalty has a deterrent effect. Does it prevent recidivism? Is it provide for justice in a way that a victim's family would like? Or on the other hand, we might bring up questions that concern whether the fact that maybe the death penalty doesn't have a deterrent effect, maybe it has no correlation to recidivism, and maybe it's a violation of human rights. I'm sure that all of you have come into tonight's debate with your own opinions, and I hope that at the end of tonight's discussion, you leave with your own opinions, but perhaps more informed ones. I'd like to, again, thank you all for coming. Special thanks to the co-op, as always, for supporting our event with their financial contributions. And I'd like to turn the microphone over to first Anjali Mohan, who's going to be making an announcement about an event that's coming up next week. And then I'll turn over the microphone to Mona McGoffker, the moderator for tonight's debate.
A format that's a little different than anything we've used in the past. The biggest difference is that there will be no questions from Longhorn Speak or from anybody else. What you're going to hear are these two sides debating the resolution that the death penalty should be abolished as a form of punishment in the United States. After the first four speeches, we'd like to invite anyone from the audience to come up to the microphone, and if you have any comments about what you've heard, we'd encourage you to have those spoken then. Another way that the audience will be able to participate tonight is actually pretty interesting. At any point during the debate, anyone is invited to come up to the microphone if they have either a point of information or a point of inquiry. A point of information will be something, if you have a challenge to something that you've heard from either of the panelists. And that would be a fact that you've heard that you think is absolutely wrong and out there, a statistic that you think is ridiculous. And we really encourage you to come up with any counter statistics or facts that you might have, but we'd really appreciate it if you had a citation with those so that we know that you're not, doing the same thing that these panelists are doing in the event that you do feel the need to come up to the microphone. You can also come up for a point of inquiry, which is basically any challenge that you have to the way you feel the panelists are respecting the rules of the debate. If you feel like either side is being disrespectful to the other side, if you feel like they are taking too much time in their speeches, which we have a timekeeper, but if you just feel like it's being excessive, you are also welcome to come up to the microphone. The way that'll work is at any point during the debate, come up to this audience microphone, and I will recognize you, and we'll actually stop this speech, and you'll be able to say whatever it is you want to say. So without further ado, we're going to begin. The first speech will be from the campaign to end the death penalty, to end the death penalty, followed by a 10-minute speech also from the Young Conservatives of Texas. So without any further ado.
All right. An important first step in any debate is identifying the terms of the debate and exactly the approach that any given side is taking. And one thing that we need to make very clear as the side affirming the resolution, supporting the abolition of capital punishment in the United States, is that capital punishment is inseparable from its setting within the United States. You cannot situate it as something apart from the racial injustices that permeate contemporary American society, the class disparities, and all the other structures of our society, something that the pro-death penalty argument often attempts to do. No less a figure than philosopher Michel Foucault has argued, criminal justice functions and justifies itself only by its perpetual reference to something other than itself. Punishment is an articulation of the world it lives in, and capital punishment is one of the most violent articulations of a society that is rotted to its core with injustice and inequality. And when approached that way, abolition truly is the only option. Now, there are a number of reasons to oppose capital punishment. One of the most popular and most common is that the death penalty condemns the innocent to die. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, 123 people have been exonerated from death row on the basis of innocence since 1973. Moreover, the Northwestern Center on Wrongful Convictions estimates that at least 38 executions have been carried out in the United States since 1976 in the face of compelling evidence of innocence. In fact, our very own state of Texas, since 1989, has executed 3 individuals whose subsequent investigations have shown were almost definitely innocent of the crimes they were convicted for. These individuals are Carlos de Luna, Ruben Cantu, and Cameron Todd Willingham. Willingham, for instance, was sentenced to death for setting a fire that killed his 2 children on the basis of outdated arson forensic science. Subsequent investigations have shown that not only was Willingham not responsible for the fire, but the fire itself was an accident and not an arson. In the meantime, the Willingham family has lost a loved one as a result of such an accident. Now, while the innocence issue is in large part the product of structural or procedural mistakes, it is also inextricably linked to broader questions about the nature of contemporary American society. And that brings us to another reason to oppose capital punishment, the fact that it targets the poor. No less a figure than Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has argued, quote, "People who are well represented at trial do not get the death penalty. I have yet to see a case among the dozens coming to the Supreme Court, one eve of execution stay application in which the defendant was well represented at trial." The May 2006 British Journal of Criminology notes that 95% of people on death row in the United States relied on court-appointed attorneys. Now, as well-intentioned as many court-appointed attorneys may be, they are notoriously underqualified, underfunded, and overburdened when it comes to handling capital as well as other cases. In fact, a 2004 American Bar Association study found that an average of 10,000 people annually are wrongfully sent to prison or death row because of incompetent public defenders. The Los Angeles Times of February 8, 2006 states that in any given metropolitan area, one can expect to find a court-appointed attorney handling upwards of 1,000 felony cases. Moreover, in Texas, about 1 in 4 death row inmates has been defended by lawyers who have been reprimanded, placed on probation, suspended, or banned from practicing law by the state bar, states the Dallas Morning News of September 10, 2000. Thus, by virtue of their inability to afford their own attorneys, people often wind up on death row not because of the facts of their case, but they could not afford an attorney who was willing and able to work for them. It's also important to note that capital cases are overwhelmingly expensive to handle. According to the British Journal of Criminal Psychology in May 2006, a capital defense costs upwards of $400,000 on average. However, in some jurisdictions, defense teams receive only $1,000 from the state when they have a court-appointed attorney. On the other hand, the Lexington Herald-Leader on January 30, 2006 explains that, for example, district attorney offices in Kentucky will receive $45 million more than defender services. Thus, you have ill-equipped defenders without sufficient resources against the entire apparatus of the state. Hence, it is no wonder that it is the poor who end up on death row. Also, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, less than 10% of death row inmates receive any college education. In fact, less than 40% have a high school diploma or GED. It is the poor and the impoverished who are on America's death rows, in large part because of their very position as poor individuals in contemporary American society. While class is certainly a profound part of what winds people up on death row, though, another specter that continues to haunt American society and no doubt implicate the practice of capital punishment is that of racism, and that it is well documented that capital punishment operates in a thoroughly racist manner.